The night before my daughter's wedding, I sat alone in my small room, smoothing out the pale blue dress that lay across the bed. It wasn't new, but it was the best I owned. The fabric was thin from years of wear, and no matter how many times I pressed it, the wrinkles seemed to crawl back. Still, I whispered to myself, this will do. This has to do. On the table beside me was a plain envelope. Inside it were the savings of a lifetime, not much to anyone else, but to me, it was every coin I had folded away. Every treat I had denied myself, every hour of work stretched into a sacrifice. I had imagined handing it to her quietly, when no one else was watching. Not as a grand gesture, but as a mother's final gift to a daughter she had raised alone. I ran my hand over the envelope again and again that night, as though by touching it I could touch the future. I imagined her smiling at me, perhaps with tears in her eyes, whispering, "Thank you, Mama. You've always given me more than enough." In my mind, I saw myself sitting in the wedding hall, my hands clasped tightly, my eyes fixed on her as she walked down the aisle. My chest would ache with pride and pain in equal measure. Pride that she had grown into such a beautiful woman. Pain that her father wasn't there to see it. Pain that he had left me too early, leaving me to carry all the weight alone. But even in my pain, I held on to that picture, me in the crowd, her looking radiant, and everyone knowing, if only for a moment, that I was the mother who had carried her this far. For days, that picture kept me alive. But dreams are fragile things. They can break with a whisper, they can shatter in a single sentence. That morning, the air outside was heavy with mist. I rose before the sun, the way I always had. Old habits don't leave you. My knees ached as I swept the floor, my back stiff as I prepared a simple breakfast. It wasn't for myself, I hardly felt hunger anymore, but for the neighbors who sometimes stopped by. I wanted no one to think I had abandoned hospitality, even in the middle of joy. I was still in the kitchen when he arrived, my future son. His knock was sharp, impatient. When I opened the door, he stepped inside with polished shoes that clicked on the boards I had scrubbed until my hands bled. His jacket was new, his hair combed sleek, his smile thin as paper. He looked around my house quickly, as if cataloging every imperfections. The faded curtains, the worn chairs, the cracks in the plaster that I had long stopped trying to hide. His gaze carried the weight of judgment, though his lips never moved. And then he looked at me. Directly, firmly. And in that moment, I knew I was no longer welcome in the world I had built. "The greatest gift for our wedding," he said calmly, as though he were making a simple request, "is if you disappear from our family." The words did not come like thunder. They came like ice, slow and chilling, settling into the marrow of my bones. At first, I thought I had misheard. Surely, no man could speak such words to a woman who had raised her daughter alone. Surely, he meant something else, some awkward phrasing, some clumsy attempt at humor, but when I turned to my daughter, she did not deny it. She did not cry out in protest. She lowered her gaze, her lips pressed into silence, and in that silence, I heard agreement. Her silence was louder than his cruelty. I stood frozen, my hands trembling against the edge of the table. My throat burned with unsaid words. I wanted to scream, to remind them of nights I had walked miles for medicine when she was sick. Of mornings when I went without bread so she could eat. Of winters when I wrapped her in my only blanket while I shivered through the cold. I wanted to remind her that she was the reason I had endured loneliness after her father's death, that her laughter had been my only wealth, her health my only dream. But the words caught in my throat. Pride and pain twisted together until my tongue refused to move. My silence became their victory. He looked satisfied, as though he had solved some great problem. She looked away, unable to meet my eyes. And I stood there, an old woman with wrinkled hands and a breaking heart, realizing for the first time that love could be dismissed like dust swept off the floor. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The pale blue dress hung from a hook, swaying slightly in the night breeze. The envelope still sat on the table, untouched. For hours, I asked myself the same question. How can love vanish so quickly? How can sacrifice turn invisible? The room gave me no answers. Only the sound of my own breath, heavy and uneven, filling the silence that had once been warm with lullabies. I thought that was the end of my humiliation, but I was wrong. That night, after he left, I sat in silence. My daughter stayed behind for a few moments, shifting from one foot to the other, as though her shoes had suddenly become too tight. I waited for her to speak, to explain, to say she didn't mean to agree with him, but her lips never opened. Instead, she touched the edge of the table with her fingers, then walked away. Her silence was not the silence of shock. It was the silence of choice. And that hurt worse than his words. When sleep finally came to me, it was thin and restless. My dreams carried me backward, to when she was small enough to rest her head against my chest. Her hair always smelled faintly of smoke from the cooking fire. And when she breathed against my collarbone, I would feel life itself beating steady in my arms. I remembered the first time she fell sick with fever. Her father was gone by then, taken from us too early, leaving me with debts and an empty bed. I had walked 2 hours in the night to fetch medicine from a clinic in town. My sandals had split against the stones. My feet bled, but I kept walking. I carried her home, pressed against my body, whispering, "Stay with me, my child, just stay." By the time we reached home, dawn had broken. Her fever eased, and she looked up at me with weak eyes and whispered, "Thank you, Mama." That one sentence gave me strength for years. I thought of that memory as I lay awake the night before the wedding. I thought of all the thank yous I had stored like treasures. And I wondered if they had meant anything at all. Morning brought no relief. The neighbors came, carrying baskets of sweets and fabrics for the wedding. I stood at the gate, greeting them, forcing a smile, handing them cups of tea in chipped porcelain. But when they thought I could not hear, their whispers reached me. "She's not even wanted there. They say her daughter is ashamed of her." Imagine raising a child all those years, only to be erased. Each word fell like a stone into the pit of my stomach. I felt myself shrinking, as though even the air around me was conspiring to push me aside. Inside, I busied myself with chore, sweeping corners already swept, wiping tables already clean. Work has always been my only shield. But even that day, they would not let me serve. "Sit down, Uma," one of the younger relatives said sharply. "You'll only get in the way. Let the younger ones handle it." I nodded, swallowing my shame. I knew she didn't mean to be cruel, but cruelty does not need intent. It only needs indifference, so I sat on a low stool in the kitchen, listening to the laughter that spilled from the courtyard. It rolled over me like a language I no longer understood. At one point, I gathered courage and stepped outside, holding a garland of flowers I had strung myself the night before. My hands shook, but I wanted to hang it over the doorway. A small contribution, a mark of blessing. Before I could reach the doorframe, a cousin intercepted me. "Leave that. The decorators already brought better ones. Yours will look shabby." She plucked the garland from my hand and tossed it onto a chair. The flowers I had chosen, the ones I had stitched together with trembling fingers, lay crumpled and forgotten. I returned to the kitchen, my heart heavier than my body could carry. Later, I overheard 2 women whispering by the water pots. "Did you see her dress?" One said, "That faded thing." She shamed them all. They didn't know I was behind the curtain. Or maybe they did, and didn't care. Either way, their laughter stung sharper than the winter wind. I touched the pale blue dress folded on my lap. It was the best I had, pressed and cared for like a sacred relic, but to them, it was just another proof that I didn't belong. I told myself, maybe she'd defend me. Maybe she'll remind them I am her mother. But no one came. When the groom's family arrived for the pre-wedding gathering, I moved toward the door to greet them. It was what I had always dreamed of, welcoming my daughter's new family. Offering them sweets, blessing their union with words older than my own bones. But before I reached the doorway, my daughter herself stepped in front of me. She did not raise her voice, but her words cut deep. "Mama, please, not now. It's better if you stay inside. They don't need to see you yet." Her voice trembled, but her meaning was clear. I was not presentable enough, not worthy enough. So, I stayed inside, sitting near the stove, the heat of the fire burning my skin while the cold of rejection burned deeper. If this moment touched your heart, please subscribe. It helps more people hear the struggles that mothers and grandmothers carry in silence. The house buzzed with music, footsteps, clapping. My body remained still, but my ears caught everything. Every laugh reminded me of the laughter we once shared, just the 2 of us. Every cheer reminded me of the cheer she once gave when I brought home even the smallest sweet. Now she gave her joy to others, and left me with silence. That evening, as I lay my head against the wall, I told myself, maybe tomorrow will be different. Maybe she will call for me. Maybe she will see me. Hope is cruel that way. It lingers, even when it knows it is unwelcome. I thought the humiliation had reached its depth. But I was wrong. The wedding day dawned colder than I expected. The morning air carried the bite of winter, though the calendar claimed it was spring. I rose early, my joints stiff, my heart heavier than the bundle of firewood I used to carry in my younger days. I unhooked the pale blue dress from where it had hung all night, my fingers traced its seams, pausing over the thin spots where the fabric had worn. Once, I had stitched these very seams with pride, making the dress fit me for my daughter's graduation. Back then, she had held my arm proudly, introducing me to her teachers. I had felt important, needed. Seen now, I wondered if the same dress would mark me as unworthy. Still, I wore it, because it was all I had. When I stepped outside, the house was alive with commotion. Relatives hurried past carrying trays of sweets, strings of marigold, brass pots of water. Music spilled from the courtyard, drums beating, the rhythm of celebration. I tried to offer help, reaching for a tray of sweets, but a young cousin brushed me aside. "No, you'll drop them. Please just sit. Just sit." Always those two words. They had once meant rest. Now they meant exile. So I sat again on a low stool near the kitchen door, watching the bustle through the doorway, like a child pressing her face against glass. At one point, I saw the groom's parents arrive. They were greeted with garlands, laughter, and respect. My daughter touched their feet, as tradition demanded, and they lifted her with smiles. I moved closer, my heart pounding. I wanted to step forward, to greet them, to welcome them into my family. But before I could, my son-in-law's eyes met mine. They were sharp, unblinking. In that glance alone, I understood. I was not welcome. My daughter did not call me. She did not introduce me. She walked away with them, leaving me standing in the doorway. My presence erased like chalk washed from a board. I turned back inside, the sound of celebration chasing me like a shadow. When the time came for her to be dressed as a bride, I longed to enter her room, to brush her hair one last time, the way I had done since childhood, to tie the end of her veil with trembling fingers, to whisper, "You will always be mine, no matter whose home you go to." But the door was shut to me. Other women bustled in and out, carrying jewels and fabrics. Their voices carried laughter and instructions. I remained outside, my hand resting on the wooden frame, listening. Once, her little hands had reached for me in every crowd. Once, her cries had summoned me in the darkest nights. Now she prepared for her wedding without me. As guests filled the courtyard, I tried once more to step among them. I thought perhaps I could greet old neighbors, share in their joy, feel like part of the day. But whispers trailed me like smoke. "That's her, the mother they want to hide. No wonder. Look at her dress. She should have stayed home." Each word was a lash across my back. I walked faster, my eyes fixed on the ground, until I reached again for the safety of the kitchen stool. When the ceremony began, I heard the music swell. Guests were called to sit in neat rows. Chairs gleamed with ribbons and cloths. I thought perhaps, this time, I would be called forward. That she would look for me, that she would wave me closer, asking me to take my place as her mother. But when I reached the hall, an usher stopped me. His voice was polite, but his words struck with the same cruelty as before. "The family has asked that you sit near the back door?" The back door? Always the back dot. My chest tightened, but I nodded. I walked to the shadowed corner, where no lantern light reached, where the draft from outside chilled my bones. From there, I watched her enter, her veil shimmering, her face glowing like sunlight. Pride filled my chest, but so did grief. I folded my hands tightly in my lap. I wanted to clap. I wanted to cheer, but my hands refused. They stayed still, as if nailed by sorrow. As the vows were spoken, as the rings were exchanged, I whispered blessings under my breath. Words my mother once whispered for me. Words older than the stones beneath the hall. No one heard them. No one wanted to. If this story has touched your heart, please subscribe. It helps these forgotten voices find their place in the world again. When the ceremony ended, cheers filled the air. Guests rose, clapping, embracing. My chair stayed still, my hands cold in my lap. I thought perhaps, after the ceremony, someone would remember me. Perhaps they would call me for a family photograph. Perhaps they would ask me to stand beside her, even for a single moment. But hope is cruel that way. It lingers, even when it knows it is unwelcome. I thought the worst was over, but I was wrong. From the back corner, I sat watching as guests surrounded the new couple. The drums beat louder, the laughter grew stronger, and I tried to let my eyes drink in every detail of her face. Because I knew these moments would not include me. Then came the part every wedding treasures, the photographs. The photographer, a young man with quick hands and a loud voice, called people forward in groups. First, the bride and groom with his parents, then with her friends, then with cousins, neighbors, relatives, whose names I had long forgotten. Each time the camera clicked, I sat straighter, waiting for my name to be called. I told myself, any moment now, they will remember. Any moment, my daughter will look up and call, "Mother, come stand beside me." Hope, once again, showed its cruel face. I watched as her uncles were called, though they had never sat with her through sickness. I watched as distant cousins were called, though they had never sacrificed for her schooling. I watched as neighbors stood proudly beside her, while I remained in the shadows. Finally, the photographer glanced toward me. His eyes softened, and he tilted his head as if to ask permission. Should she join? He said aloud. For a moment, the world froze. My daughter's eyes flickered toward me. My heart leapt. I was sure she would nod, sure she would call me. But before she could, my son-in-law leaned down and whispered something in her ear. She lowered her gaze, and then, with a calm voice that echoed through the hall, he said, "No. These are family pictures. Family pictures." And I was not family. The camera clicked, capturing joy I was not allowed to share. My daughter smiled at the lens, while I sat only a few steps away, erased from the frame. I pressed my hands together to stop them from trembling. In that moment, I thought of the wooden box beneath my bed at home. Inside were every photograph I had ever kept of her, baby pictures, school portraits, small snapshots of birthdays and festivals. I had saved them like gold, pulling them out on lonely nights to remind myself of why I endured. Now, on her most important day, I was not worthy of even the corner of a photograph. I told myself, it is fine. Perhaps they will at least allow me to bless her, to place my hand on her head, to whisper one last prayer into her ears before she leaves my home forever. But when I rose from my chair and tried to step forward, a relative touched my arm. "Not now, Oma. It's too crowded. Let them enjoy their moment." I sat back down. My body obeyed, though my heart wanted to collapse at their feet. If you believe no mother should be erased from her own child's story, please share this video. Let the world remember the sacrifices of forgotten women. The music swelled again, covering the sound of my breaking heart. The bride and groom posed for another set of pictures, their smiles wide, their arms intertwined. Each flash of the camera was like a hammer striking a nail deeper into my chest. I lowered my eyes to the floor, but the tears would not stay hidden. They slid down my cheeks, silent, salty, shameful. I wiped them quickly, hoping no one noticed, but even if they had, I doubt they would have cared. All around me, joy poured like water into every cup. Only mine stayed empty. I thought the pain had reached its depth, but life had one more cruelty waiting. After the photographs ended, the guests began to drift toward the reception hall. The aroma of rich food floated in the air: spiced rice, roasted meats, sweet puddings. My stomach growled, but I pressed my hand against it, ashamed of the sound. I rose from my corner, thinking perhaps there would be a place for me among them. Just one seat at the edge of a table. Just one plate to remind me I still belonged. But when I reached the tables, every chair was already filled. Friends and cousins laughed together, clinking glasses, sharing stories. Even distant relatives had places reserved with name cards carefully written. No card bore my name. I stood awkwardly, my hands fidgeting with the hem of my dress. For a moment, I considered asking someone where I should sit. But before I could, a waiter approached, avoiding my eyes. His voice was low, apologetic, but the words were sharp as knives. "I'm sorry, Oma. The family asked that you remain in the corner." The corner. Always the corner. I nodded, forcing my lips into a faint smile, though my chest burned. I turned back, each step heavier than the last, and lowered myself again onto the small stool near the drafty back door. From there, I watched the tables sparkle with joy. Plates clattered, laughter echoed, music swelled. My daughter sat proudly beside her husband, her veil lifted slightly, her smile radiant. Her new family surrounded her with love and attention. While I sat only a few steps away, invisible, no one asked if I had eaten. No one noticed my empty hands. My hunger grew, but pride kept me still. Better to starve in silence than to beg for scraps at my own daughter's wedding. As I sat, I overheard voices from a nearby table. "Why is she even here? Didn't they ask her not to come? Look at her dress. It doesn't fit with all this grandeur." If she truly loved her daughter, she would have stayed away. Each word was a dagger twisted deeper. I bowed my head lower, wishing the ground would open and swallow me whole. Hours passed. I watched them cut the cake, watched them feed each other, watched guests applaud and cheer. My palms itched to clap, my lips ached to smile, but my body remained still. I thought of the small envelope waiting in my drawer at home, the money I had saved for her. I had dreamed of slipping it into her hands that night, whispering, "Use this to build your new life. It's not much, but it carries all my love." But I knew now she would not take it. She would only see it as pity, or worse, as shame. So I stayed quiet, clutching nothing but my own trembling hands. If you believe no mother should be left hungry and alone at her own child's wedding, please like this video. It helps more people see the truth of forgotten mothers. The music grew louder. The floor shook with the rhythm of dancing feet. Guests clapped in circles, their faces glowing with delight. My daughter laughed as her husband spun her around the floor. Her veil swirled, her bracelets jingled. She looked like the morning sun, blazing with light, and I was the night sky, dark and distant, holding my silence while the world celebrated without me. At last, when the night grew long and the candles began to burn low, I rose from my stool. My legs ached, my back stiff, but my pride carried me. No one saw me leave. Not a single face turned toward the back door as I slipped into the cold night air. The streets were quiet, the chill biting deeper than any winter before. My pale blue dress caught the weak light of the street lamps as I walked. Step by step, I carried myself home, each footfall echoing against the stones. I wanted to collapse, I wanted to scream, but I straightened my back instead. As I neared my door, I thought of what awaited me inside. The empty room, the unopened envelope, the silence that would not judge me. I told myself, they may erase me from their tables, from their pictures, from their day, but they cannot erase me from truth. I am still her mother. I will always be her mother. When I reached my home, the house welcomed me with silence. No music, no laughter. Only the sound of the old wooden door creaking on its hinges as I pushed it open. The pale blue dress brushed against my legs as I entered the empty room. I hung it carefully on the hook by the wall, as though it had done no wrong. The envelope of money still waited on the table, just as I had left it. I touched it with my fingertips, then pulled my hand back as though it might burn me. For a long while, I stood by the window, staring into the darkness. My body trembled from the chill of the night, but it was my heart that felt frozen. I thought of my daughter's laughter echoing in that bright hall. I thought of the way her eyes had passed over me like I was a stranger. And then I thought of the little girl she once was, the one who clung to my sorry when thunder frightened her. The one who whispered, "Don't leave me, Mama." I wanted to scream into the night. "I never left you. It was you who left me." But no voice came. Only tears, hot and bitter, sliding down my cheeks in the quiet. I sat on the edge of my bed, my palms open on my knees. My body felt heavy, but my mind refused to rest. It raced through years of memories, every sacrifice, every joy, every moment that had led us here. I remembered walking miles to work in the fields. My feet blistered, so she could go to school with books in her hand. I remembered selling the little jewelry I had after her father died, so she could have new shoes for her graduation. I remembered tying her hair into braids before school, humming songs to chase away her sadness. And I asked myself, was all of it forgotten? Or was it remembered, and simply not enough? I rose and opened the wooden box beneath my bed. Inside were all the photographs I had saved. Her baby picture, her first day at school, the drawing she once made of me with crooked lines and smiling eyes. I held them one by one, my tears falling onto the paper. In those pictures, I was part of her story. In those moments, she had looked at me with love. Now, in her new photographs, I did not exist. I placed the pictures back into the box, closed the lid, and whispered, "You cannot erase me from these. These are mine." If you believe no mother should be erased from her child's memories, share this story. Let others know that dignity and sacrifice deserve to be remembered. The night stretched long. I sat by the window, watching the moon climb higher. The silence of the house wrapped around me like a thin shawl. It was cold, but it was kinder than the words I had heard that day. I told myself, dignity is sometimes the only gift left for the forgotten, and I will hold it tightly, even if I hold it alone. I could have cursed them. I could have sworn never to forgive, but bitterness would only poison the little I had left. Instead, I whispered a prayer, not for myself, but for her. May she never know the loneliness I feel tonight. May she never sit in the shadows at her own child's wedding. May she never learn how silence can kill more than words. I pressed my palms together and let the tears fall onto them like holy water. As dawn approached, the sky pale with the first light, I rose from my seat. My eyes burned, my body ached, but my back remained straight. I told myself one final truth. They can erase me from their tables, from their photographs, from their lives, but they cannot erase me from being her mother. That title, no one can take. The first light of dawn touched my window, painting the walls a dull gray. I had not slept. My body longed for rest, but my heart kept replaying every moment of the night before the whispers. The laughter, the photographs that had captured joy without me. I rose slowly, my bones protesting, and poured water into a small brass cup. My hands shook as I lifted it, and I saw my reflection ripple in the surface. Wrinkled face, tired eyes, but still the face of a mother. And that thought steadied me. I walked to the mirror where the pale blue dress hung, its fabric now limp, its color faded by the events it had witnessed. I touched it once more. The dress had not failed me. I had failed myself by hoping it would be enough. I folded it carefully, placing it inside the trunk with my few other belongings. Then I sat again by the window, the wooden box of photographs resting on my lap. I opened it slowly, letting the past spill out like sunlight. There was her picture at age 3, holding a doll with a missing arm. The smile on her face had been pure joy, though the doll was broken. She had never cared about perfection. She had only cared that I was there to play beside her. There was another picture, her school portrait, her hair uneven because I had cut it myself with dull scissors, but her grin wide and proud. She had said to me that day, "Mama, I look like a princess," and I had believed her. Another, her graduation. Her gown was second-hand, borrowed from a neighbor's child, but she had clutched her certificate with pride. I had been at her side, wearing this same pale blue dress, clapping until my palms stung. In every picture, my presence was etched beside hers. I had been part of her story, her world. And yet, last night, I was erased with one sentence. No, these are family pictures. I closed the box and held it tightly against my chest. The wood was rough, but it steadied me. I whispered aloud, as though speaking to the photographs themselves. You remember me. Even if she does not, you do. You carry my love. And love cannot be erased by silence. The day outside was already moving. I heard vendors calling in the street, children laughing as they chased each other past my door. Women carrying water pots and gossiping about the wedding. I wondered what story they would tell. Perhaps they would say I was bitter, or unwanted, or too poor to fit in. Perhaps they would say I had been hidden away for everyone's comfort. But my story was different. My truth was different. And even if no one listened, I would speak it to the walls if I had to. If this story touched you, please share it so that no mother's truth is ever buried beneath silence. I leaned back, my eyes heavy but my mind clear. I began to speak aloud, not to the room, not to the walls, but to her, to my daughter. My child, you may forget me, but I cannot forget you. You may erase me from your pictures, but I cannot erase you from my heart. You may give me no seat at your table, but in my prayers, you will always sit at the center. I will not curse you. I will not beg for your love. I will carry my dignity, even if it means carrying it alone. My voice cracked, but I continued. One day, when your own hands tremble, when your own children no longer look at you the way they once did, then you will remember me. And you will understand. By then, it may be too late to sit together, but my love will still be here. Because a mother's love does not die when she is erased. It grows silent, but it waits. The words hung in the room, filling the silence with a strange warmth. I pressed my hand to my chest and let the tears flow freely now, no longer ashamed. In that moment, I understood something. They had taken my place at the wedding, but they had not taken my place in history. My story lived in every scar on my hands, every wrinkle on my face, every picture in the box under my bed. And as long as I remembered myself, I had not disappeared. The sun had fully risen by the time I stood again. Its light stretched across the floor, turning the cracks in the wall golden. I moved slowly, my joints stiff, my chest heavy, but my back unbent. I washed my face with cool water, letting the tears of the night rinse away. Then I lit a small lamp before the picture of my late husband. The flame flickered gently, steadying me. I carried her alone, I whispered to him. I carried her through every storm. And last night, she carried me out of her story. But still, I will not curse her. Because my love is mine to keep, and dignity is the last gift I give myself. I stepped outside, into the hum of morning. Neighbors' eyes followed me, some with pity, some with curiosity, some with judgment. I met their gaze calmly. Let them whisper. I had nothing left to prove. Children ran past, laughing, their voices a melody of innocence. One little girl turned and smiled at me, waving with sticky fingers. For a moment, my heart softened. I waved back, and in her smile I saw the child my daughter once was. The child who had needed me. The child who had loved me. That memory was enough to carry me through the street without shame. When I returned to my room, I sat again by the window. The envelope of money remained unopened. I slid it back into the drawer, locking it away. Perhaps, one day I would use it for my own burial at least, then. No one could deny me a place. The pale blue dress, I folded carefully, smoothing it once more, not for the wedding, but for memory. It was not a failure. It was proof that I had tried. Proof that I had come with love. Even if my love was unwanted. I thought of all the mothers in the world, women who had bent their backs, hardened their hands, broken their bodies to raise children who would one day walk away. Some were remembered, many were forgotten, and some, like me, were erased even while still breathing. I spoke aloud, not just for myself, but for them. To the daughters who forget, remember this: your mother carried you before the world even knew your name. She bore hunger so you could eat, silence so you could speak, loneliness so you could belong. If you leave her behind, you do not erase her, you erase yourself. And to the mothers who sit in shadows like me, hold your head high. They may push you aside, but dignity is a crown no one can steal. Wear it, even in silence. Wear it, even in pain. For our sacrifices are not wasted. They are written in the bones of the children we raised. If you believe every mother deserves respect, press like and comment, respect below. Let no story of sacrifice remain unheard. The lamp beside me flickered, and I leaned back, closing my eyes. My body ached, but my spirit steadied. I knew the wedding hall would keep buzzing with laughter in the days to come. I knew new photographs would hang proudly in my daughter's new home, photographs without me. But in this small house, in this quiet room, my truth remained, and truth cannot be erased. They had asked me to disappear, and perhaps, in their world, I already had. But in mine, I remained dignified, unbroken, a mother still.